Welcome, spicy demons. This is Lord Cronid, and in this guide, I'm going to show you the optimal way to use summons in Doom Eternal's battle mode. First things first, let's get the obvious out of the way. Summons in battle mode are AI demons that you can place that will help you in your fight against the Slayer. What summons you have are determined by the loadout you choose before the game begins, and each loadout on every demon has either 2 or 3 unique summons that can be brought with it. Overall, I do not plan to go into specific numbers with any of the summons as this could change from update to update. However, I will go over general strategies on how you should use and place your summons that will be true no matter what patch you are playing in. First things first, let's get into the general purposes of summons. There are several main purposes that you could have in placing your summons. One of them is to win the neutral game, in which neutral is the term we coin at the fact that there is a state of the game where it is disadvantageous for both sides to push, and you are trying to gain a health or resource advantage that will let you be the aggressor. Generally speaking, in the neutral game, you are safely poking in order to do little bits of damage to the Slayer while you're trying to preserve your own health. That way you can get the advantage. Summons can be very useful in doing this because placing summons allows you to have these AI engage the Slayer while you are still in a safe position far away. The other purpose of summons, which I've usually used them in opposed to chip damage, which is what I'd call the previous tactic, is using them in order to control space. Essentially, when you have a summon on the battlefield, they have an area around them where the Slayer cannot enter that area without either killing the summon or effectively disrespecting them and being punished for it. Due to this, you're able to place your summons in a manner so that you're controlling the Slayer's pathing and you're preventing them from being able to reach places in a short time span. This is very useful for when you're chasing the Slayer and you are trying to prevent him from escaping, or when you are kiting away from the Slayer and you need to put something between him and you in order to make some space and survive. Regarding the purpose of summons, I should note that if you do not have a specific purpose of placing your summon, you should not put them on the battlefield at all. A big mistake that a lot of players make is that they will put their summons down at the start of the match in a very random location, and they won't pay very much attention at all until they are dead. If a summon is in a spot that is unideal, it is more likely than not that they're just going to be used by the Slayer in order to be killed and regain stack, instead of actually causing any form of punishment to that Slayer. And so because of that, it's basically better to just not have the summon on the battlefield at all than have it be without a purpose. Regarding which of these purposes you dedicate your summon to depends on the context of the situation. If the Slayer has a stack advantage, and especially if they have a lot of armor, you could use your summon to do chip damage safely. That way, you could put the stack advantage in your favor and give you the ability to push with an advantage. However, it should be noted that when you put down a summon when it is already alive, or when that summon is killed, it starts a cooldown in which you won't be allowed to summon that summon again. Due to this, it could be very bad to place it in a chip manner, and then be put in a situation where you need that summon to survive and you cannot place him. That is why you want to be very careful when you're doing this, because the other scenario for summons is when you need to survive and you are placing that summon to create space between you and the Slayer, in which you ideally want to put him in ledges, jump pads, tight choke points, anything where the hitbox and the damage and the stuns that are caused by that summon is going to be a problem for the Slayer and his mobility. One more thing that I should note about resummoning is that when you resummon a demon, as of this patch, it drops health when it is resummoned and is already alive, and in addition to this, it is possible that in future patches from when this is uploaded, they could also drop things such as ammo or armor to be additional punishment for the demons. Due to this, you should really not be resummoning your demons unless they are very far away from the Slayer, or you have a loot block active and these won't drop anything because of that. Due to the fact that resummons only drop health this patch and not armor, if the Slayer is full on health, it is technically okay to resummon in order to get rid of armor, as they're not really able to pick up that health. However, you do have to keep in mind that by resummoning, you are increasing the cooldown in which they can't be spawned for a while after that. And so personally, while I wouldn't put them over and over again in order to chip, it is technically an option. I should note though that if you were doing this, you are going to be BM'd by people in the chat because it's generally considered a cheap option. First things first, let's go over the different summons that you have access to. You're able to sort these summons into two different categories, normal summons and heavy summons. When it comes to the heavy summons, they have much longer cooldown when they are killed or respawned, and so you need to be a little more careful in your placement of these because you won't have them again for a while. These include the Cacodemon, the Arachnotron, and the Hell Knight. The rest of the summons go into what we call regular summons, which are a little more lightweight and not as deadly, and because of that, they have a more frequent respawn time. These include the Maker Drone, the Prowler, Shield Soldiers, and finally, the Carcass. Now, I plan on going over the individual strengths of each of these summonable demons. Let's start with the Arachnotron. As I stated before, the Arachnotron is a heavy demon. It is a ranged demon, and so it will usually try to stay at a distance and use the turret on its back, which can be destroyed by the Slayer. If this happens, it will resort to grenades. While it is ranged, if the Slayer comes too close to it, it has a very strong melee attack that it will use. In my personal use of the Arachnotron, I like to use the fact that he has the biggest hitbox in the entire game out of all of the summons at your disposal. If you put the Arachnotron on top of a jump pad, or in a tight choke point, the Slayer won't be able to go through it at all without being punished. You could also dance around an Arachnotron as a meat shield if you were playing one of the smaller demons, though I would usually not try to do this unless you're having a very desperate situation. Next is the Cacodemon. The Cacodemon is the only flying summon and will constantly float towards the Slayer. He has two main types of attacks, a ranged attack in which he lets out a devastating flurry of orbs, and a bite which is the most punishing attack out of any of the AI. Many regard him as the strongest summon, and in terms of my personal favorite ways to use him, there is a very heavy overlap with the Arachnotron. However, in addition to how I would place an Arachnotron, there's the fact that he floats. Because of this, it is possible to place him above a vertical jump pad, so that when the Slayer uses it, he bonks his head against the bottom of the Cacodemon and ends up falling to the ground. This is a pretty hilarious way to kill a Slayer, though it's also going to make him very salty. The last heavy demon is the Hell Knight. The Hell Knight is a melee-only demon, characterized by constant aggression. He is able to tank a lot of damage, and his melee attacks have a devastating amount of movement impairment when he lands them. In placing a Hell Knight, you could use him in all the same ways as an Arachnotron, but on top of that, you could place him behind the Slayer in an attempt to create a sandwich effect. This is best with the Hell Knight due to the fact that he's always charging towards the Slayer, whereas the other demons might have a bit of a delay. One scenario, which is very strong with this, is if you were playing the Archvile, as if you catch the Slayer between one of your firewalls and a Hell Knight, they're in for a very sticky situation in which they are going to receive a lot of punishment from all sources of damage because of their inability to escape it. Now, for the smaller summons. I generally place all of these guys with the exact same tactics in mind. The Carcass is an infuriating summon that has a very strong melee, a very strong ranged attack, and will place shields throughout the map. It should be noted that these shields are a double-edged sword as they block both sides, and so you have to be careful that you're not getting caught in situations in which your own Carcass's shield becomes the cause of your death. This can be especially true for the larger demons who are more likely to be caught on them. It should be noted that even though the Carcasses are known for their shields, as I stated, both of their types of attacks are very strong, and if they manage to do damage to the Slayer, this is some of the best damage output that you're going to get from any of the summons. With the Maker Drone, it is a fast and skinny demon, and it generally prefers to be a harasser with its range attacks. It is okay at best with this job, as they could be killed with a single headshot from the Slayer. Don't worry though, they won't drop all of the loot they do in campaign. The thing I love about the Maker Drone, however, is the melee attack. If the Slayer is caught in melee range of a Maker Drone, it does a spin attack which will unleash devastating amounts of CC. When you first place the Maker Drone, try to keep that melee in mind and see if you could coerce the Slayer into approaching where you plan to spawn it. After all, the only real purpose I'd say in spawning a Maker Drone in high level play is for that melee attack. Prowlers are questionable. The Prowler is basically a smaller, weaker Hell Knight that teleports. The big problem with Prowlers is that they die in a single shot from many of the Slayer's weapons, and they don't really have much of a kick. Many, including myself, tend to wonder if they're even worth being spawned, and I guess it mostly comes down to the specific scenarios, as occasionally a Prowler will save your life, but I would not count on it. My favorite of the regular summons is Shield Soldiers. Shield Soldiers are the only summon that spawn 2 demons, though it should be noted that they are considered fodder. Due to this, they can be slain with 1 chainsaw pip. Keep this in mind, as you want to consider how many chainsaw pips the Slayer has when placing these, as he could use the chainsaw as a way to avoid whatever punishment you plan on dishing out. However, despite this, I love Shield Soldiers, as they are the only demon that stays where you spawn them. Due to this, they excel at my strategies of trying to control the space. If disrespected by the Slayer, both of them will let out a flurry of shotgun attacks that add up very fast, as well as having access to a slower shotgun blast that is far more devastating than most player demon attacks. These are my favorite demon to put next to a ledge, as if the Slayer climbs that ledge, they are all but guaranteed to lose lots of health, maybe even up to a third in an instant from their shotguns. Now that I have gone over all the general information about summons, let's go over the plays I like to do with them. After all, that's why most of you are probably here, as it's pretty easy to learn the basics of summons on your own. I have a number of specific plays that I've already mentioned that can have devastating effects in a match. For the most part, I don't intend to mention any chip tactics, as these don't take a lot of strategy to perform and I don't really believe them to be as good as all my other tactics. Strategy number 1 is the ledge summon. The ledge summon is used to protect a ledge that the Slayer intends to climb up or use a jump pad to get up to. The strength of this is that when they are ledge climbing, they have no way of fighting back or blocking damage for a brief moment while they are caught in the animation. Even if they don't use the animation, it can be very difficult to get past the ledge when they are being caught on enemy hitboxes, and more often than not, they will just fall down to the ground. It should be noted that by doing a ledge summon, you are giving the Slayer something to meat hook in order to get up. Despite this, it could often be beneficial for the reasons I listed, and this could be avoided by trying to place the summons at the very last second before they go up the ledge. These are best done with the Arachnotron, Cacodemons, Shield Soldiers, and the Carcass. Next is the Jump Pad summon. The Jump Pad summon is placed directly on top of a jump pad, so their hitbox is covering it and the Slayer can't use it. This is a great way to counter that prick who won't stop spamming jump pads on penance, as not only will they not get launched into the sky, but they're probably going to get slapped in the face, and if they aren't an experienced player, they're probably going to panic that things are not going according to plan. This is best done with the Arachnotron, Cacodemon, and Hell Knight. You could also use Shield Soldiers to do this, but they're probably just going to do damage and not block the Slayer, as they are fodder. And the most you could hope for is that simple grazing as they pass by. There is also a tactic in which you combine a jump pad summon and a ledge summon. You don't place them on top of the jump pad, but instead exactly where the Slayer is headed with the jump pad. This is great for doing lots of damage and potentially making them drop to the ground like a fish out of the water. The Cacodemon reigns supreme with this tactic due to his ability to float directly above a jump pad, and so even though it's not exactly a ledge, they could just hit their head on the Cacodemon and fall to the ground. It's pretty funny. Next is the Choke Point summon. A Choke Point summon is generally used in a very tight space that the Slayer is forced to go through in order to prevent them from going through it. It works with most of the summons, but works best with the heavy summons, as your goal is to remove most of the opening with the hitbox and the threat of attacks. This is the strongest summon tactic when it comes to slowing down a Slayer, let it be to help you catch up to them or to help you flee. A tactic similar to this that can be used at any time on any of the ground demons is what I refer to as the drop and run. You look at your feet and place a summon, and then you run for it. This is only used on the defensive, and I would only use it as a desperation tactic, as it's much less result yielding than the other summon placements I have mentioned. As I am known for my game sense rants, I could talk about this for hours, but I want to keep it short. So on a final note, I'm going to talk about the ways summons interact with specific abilities. The first of these I will mention is Mancubus. This will be short and simple. Essentially, a summon inside of a smoke is a deadlier summon. End of story. Most importantly, there is the way summons interact with an Archvile. Many like to think that the Archvile is behind all of the other demons, but this is only true to a very small extent this patch. People who are confident about this claim tend to ignore the fact that the Archvile is unique in the sense that he significantly increases the lethality of all summons when played correctly. First of all, there's Fire Lake with Broiling Heat, which will make the Slayer do 25% less damage and take 25% more damage from all sources. This is great to proc whenever you could foresee the Slayer is going to interact with a summon. More importantly is the Archvile's walls. The Firewall is a space creation tool that when used defensively will completely block a path for a Slayer. When the Slayer commits to movement in one direction and a wall is placed in that direction, they are forced to turn around, and this is devastating considering the fact that the summons are very aggressive and will probably have chased him into that wall. This forces him into a situation in which he must pass the summons, thus constantly increases the chances of him getting hit by them. The most common case of this is an Agile Archvile, where as I previously mentioned it is very easy to create a sandwich with a wall and a Hell Knight. Mix in a Fire Lake and a Hazard while he's getting caught on things, and the Slayer is in a world of pain. Keep in mind that this is possible with every summon, and not just the Hell Knight, but the Hell Knight is the most common scenario in which this happens with. One cheap thing you could do as well is to place a firewall in front of a Glory Kill or a Chainsaw and place your AI behind the Glory Kill or Chainsaw, and as soon as they end those immunity frames, they are not going to have a fun time getting out of there. I personally don't do this too much, but it's technically fair game. Alright, before I end this, I'm going to quickly go over the two things I didn't touch. First of all is the Baron of Hell, which is only super heavy in battle mode and you need to select it as a power upgrade in round 4. The main reason I didn't really go over him is that mechanically he's literally just a giant Hell Knight, so just use him like a Hell Knight if you want to use him. But honestly, I wouldn't usually recommend using him as he is not worth your power upgrade slot. And the other thing I did not go over is the buff minions perk, which essentially this increases your minion damage by 50%. And it also decreases the cooldowns for your minions. The reason I didn't really touch on this is simply the fact that with this perk, it is not going to change the way you play at all, it's just going to make your minions stronger. So, that concludes my guide. I hope you have fun putting summons on your enemies, and destroying all the Slayers you encounter. If you enjoyed the video, and you want to see more of them from me, feel free to subscribe. Though I don't honestly care about the number, so I really don't do it unless you actually want to see more of my videos, because you can do whatever you want, honestly. It's just so you get the fucking notification.